The estimated 400 years of history ruled by King Manadev and his successor is called the Lichavi period. Amshuverma, the most powerful dictator of the Lichavi period, is not the successor of the Lichavi dynasty. Amshuverma is of the Thakuri clan. The Lichavis were Surya Vangsi and Amshuverma was Chandra Vangsi. In most of the Amshuverma's talk, the moon is inscribed on the lion. Nowhere in his record does he mention himself as a king. The Lichavi king Sivadev and Amshuverma seems to have mentioned two kinds of relationship. Some historians have mentioned Amshuverma as a nephew of Lichavi king Sivadev, while others have mentioned him as King Sivadev's son-in-law. Looking at both the relationship together, it seems likely Amshuverma was both son-in-law as well as nephew of King Sivadev. Similarly, Sivadev may have made Amshuverma son-in-law by marrying his daughter to him. Sivadev had to take power from the ministers of that time, and he knew Amshuverma was a clever politician. Amshuverma's rise came from Bikram Sambat 649. He had climbed every step of politics carefully and reached the axis of power. The clever politician Amshuverma first pushed King Sivadev to seize power from the hands of the ministers. When the situation became favorable, he took all the power himself. He started his career in politics as an assistant to King Sivadev. Even as an assistant, he seems to have grown power in less time. He was initially Sri Samanta or simply minister, but was promoted to Sri Mahasamanta or prime minister in a very short period of time. Especially in Vishalnagar, Sivadev started the rule by removing the Bhumiguptas or other ministers. However, this victory was done by his nephew Amshuverma, who did not belong to Lichavi family. Disgusted by the increasing dominance of the Guptas and ministers, King Sivadev took Amshuverma in his hands and gradually brought down the Guptas, as a result of which Amshuverma became powerful day by day. Amshuverma, who was brought to power according to the same plan, became much more powerful than the Gupta minister. So, as Sivadev's glory diminished, power began to concentrate in Amshuverma. In the few years after defeating Bhumigupta and other ministers, Amshuverma became the Mahasamanta like the prime minister. With the rise of Amshuverma, no matter how much royal respect there was on the outside, Sivadev had become the king with no power. King Sivadev was so impressed by Amshuverma's erudition, personality and ingenuity that Amshuverma was finally given all the royal power. Amshuverma, being Sri Samanta and Sri Mahasamanta, also held the title of Maharaj Dhiraj, which no Lichavi kings had taken before. Maharaj was also returned to the great feudal lords at that time. Therefore, there is no basis to say with certainty that Amshuverma was the king. However, since he wrote Shrestha from Sri Mahasamanta, Amshuverma, it can be only speculated that he may have become king from Mahasamanta. Although Sivadev's position was higher in terms of royal honor, all governance was in the hands of Amshuverma. Amshuverma seems clever in climbing the ladder of power. He was aware and cautious that the people would be dissatisfied when all the rights were taken away from the Lichavi king Sivadev, who had just been freed from the bondage of avirs and ministers. Even though he was only a feudal lord, he sang praises in his name like a king saying, "Clean and great fame has spread. His own power has defeated the enemy's domination." In 661 Bikram Sambat, Amshuverma succeeded in taking over the entire responsibility of the kingdom from King Sivadev. As a result, Amshuverma became king. This was the first time a minister had taken over the kingdom. In the same year, Sivadev handed over the throne to Amshuverma and became inactive. Even there, Sivadev could not last long. By his own volition or by Amshuverma's force, Sivadev left the palace Managriha and became a monk. After that, Amshuverma declared Sivadev's son Udayadev as the prince and took over the throne independently. Amshuverma was no longer called Sri Samanta or Sri Mahasamanta. He was not associated with any post but was only called Shrestha. In many records of that time, he is addressed by the same name. He even used his name as Shrestha while writing. As his political status or ambitions became so high, he stopped calling himself Shrestha. Instead, they start saying Maharaj Dhiraj Shrestha. This is the first time in the history of Nepal that a ruler is called Maharaj Dhiraj. Before that, some Lichavi kings, including Manadev, were called Maharaj. The practice started by Amshuverma was followed by all the subsequent rulers of Nepal. It can be understood from the context that Sivadev issued the order with the permission of Amshuverma in the records of Banepa that Amshuverma has from a different existence. No matter how much he increased his power, he never tried to stay in the royal palace of the Lichavi kings. Instead, he started the construction of the Kailaskut Bhavan as soon as his power increased, as a separate royal palace was needed to make the growth of his kingdom more powerful. Since he is a devotee of Shiva, his palace was named Kailaskut Bhavan. When Amshuverma was given the full responsibility of governing, he did not consider it appropriate to rule in the same palace like the Lichavi kings. He wanted to look different and special. Therefore, he has constructed Kailaskut building in his own design and established it as a power center. In essence, Kailaskut Bhavan is considered to be the center of power and diplomacy during Lichavi period. Records and inscriptions previously issued from the Managriha Palace began to be issued from the Kailaskut Palace during the reign of Amshuverma. It seems that Amshuverma did not rule from the Lichavi Palace Managriha and built a separate palace for himself. The newly built palace was naturally more magnificent than the old one. Udayadev, Dhurvadev and Bhimarjunadev, the Lichavi king, remained in the Managriha Palace. Amshuverma's tenure was about 30 years. During this period, he became from the king's assistants to the king himself, but did not dare to change the dynasty legally. If he had done so, instead of declaring Udayadev a prince, he could have vested the monarchy to his own children. It is unknown at this time why he did not do that, or simply he could not do that. It is said that he did not change the monarchy because of his personal faith in the Lichavi king, even though he captured all the power to himself. During Amshuverma's time, maintaining ties with two neighboring kingdoms was very difficult. King of Tibet, Songtsen Gampo, emerged as a powerful king with an outgoing penchant, if not aggressive design. King Harshavardhan of India too was a dominant monarch with an expansive posture. Both appeared aggressive towards Nepal. Tibetans were in exploratory temper in their initial opening towards the south, and Indians were promoting their existence contract, trade, and political influence in Nepal. During his time, Harshavardhan in India and Songtsen Gampo in Tibet established powerful empires, so he allied himself with Tibet. During Amshuverma's time, the Tibetan emperor Songtsen Gampo extended his hand of love to the two neighboring capitals, Kathmandu and Beijing. Seizing this opportunity, Amshuverma may have married King Udayadev's daughter Brikuti with Songtsen Gampo. This royal marital relation took Nepal-Tibet relation to new heights. The most important achievement during his rule was the expansion of economic relation with Tibet. The Nepal-Tibet trade route came into vogue from his time. This increased the importance of Koligram and South Koligram compared to the then capital Harigaon. Most of the trade goods entered the valley via Titsung and Chitlang. This was the main route to the Kathmandu Valley until the Tribhuvan Highway was built. After passing the Chandragiri Hill, one had to set foot in South Koligram and then go to the old city of Harigaon and Devpatan only by the way of Koligram. Lele, another way to enter Kathmandu through Chapagaon, used to collide with Koligram and South Koligram before Harigaon. This led to faster expansion of Koligram and South Koligram than other parts of the valley, which is now central Kathmandu. The fact that he continued to study various scriptures day and night is mentioned in the Deupatan inscription of 672 Bikram Sambat as Oni Sinisi Chanikasha Shrestha Vimarsa Vasadita Chadarsananyot, meaning that he gained good vision while discussing the meaning of various scriptures day and night. Amshuverma has addressed himself by the nickname Sri Kala Havimani. Amshuverma has written a book on grammar. While in the Gopal Rajvangsavali, it has been mentioned that while describing Amshuverma, grammar is discussed. In one of the book of Gopal dynasty, it is mentioned that Amshuverma himself created Nepali grammar. Some historians have referred to Amshuverma as the one who practiced teaching grammar in Nepal. Scholars have been discussing what Amshuverma's book is all about. Some scholars are of the opinion that the text is related to grammar or rhetoric, while others believe that the text is grammatically related to phonetic education. In any cases, there is no doubt that Amshuverma was a scholar and had the ability to prepare text. In his time, the people had achieved religious liberalism and autonomy. The custom of formally declaring a prince also started from his time. As a Hindu king, he even held the title of Pasupati Padhanugrit. He ruled for 16 years. Amshuverma died in 678. The Gupta affair minister began to salvage again. Amshuverma had announced his successor Udaydev, son of King Sivadev. After the death of Amshuverma in 679 Bikram Sambat, Udaydev, who was on the throne, was removed 2 years later by his brother Dhurvdev and Gupta feudal lord Jisnugupta. Udaydev and his family took refuge in Tibet. Udaydev died in Tibet while his son Narendradev lived in exile in Tibet for 17 years from 681 to 698 Bikram Sambat. The lost glory of Lichavi dynasty came back only in 700 Bikram Sambat when Narendradev invaded Kathmandu with the help of Tibetan army. It is believed that Narendradev, with the help of Tibetan army and the people, started a revolution against the Avar dictator around 700 Bikram Sambat. Chinese messenger Li Piao described Narendradev on the throne of Nepal on his way when he visited the Indian emperor Harshavardhan in the same year. During the reign of Udaydev, who became the king after Amshuverma, ruled jointly with the Guptas. The king ruled from Managriha palace and the Gupta minister lived in the Kailaskut palace. Udaydev's son Narendradev left his ancestral home and ascended the throne of Kailaskut palace. The word throne has been around since the time of Narendradev, and Narendradev is also the first king of Nepal to sit on the throne. After Narendradev removed the Gupta Avar and took over the government, he ruled for more than 36 years. Like Amshuverma and his father Udaydev, he also took the title of Maharaj Dhiraj. During his reign, neither Abir nor any groups declared to revolt. The Lichavi dynasty began again. That is why Narendradev is given a higher status among the Lichavi kings after Manadev. In the 7th century, during Narendradev's rule, Chinese traveler Wang Hongche came to Nepal on a visit to India. That traveler has explained the king and the court of Nepal. According to this, there was one such palace in Nepal which stood at 200 cycles and 80 feet in the length and width. It had a capacity of 10,000 people on the upper floor. It was on the 7th floor of the building. Many amazing idols were decorated. Precious gems and pearls were attached to each part of the building. In the center was a 7-story bastion with a copper roof. Its balcony, pillars and every object there were adorned with high-grade precious gems. The golden crocodile shaped place on all 4 sides of the roof had a broken copper streams that looked like a mountain waterfall when water fell from its mouth. Precious pearls and gems were attached to the windows, and the rooms was adorned with beautiful statues and pictures. The fame and splendor of the Kailaskut building was a topic of discussion not only in Nepal but also abroad. This is confirmed by the story of a Chinese traveler. Amshuverma's Kailaskut and Manadev's Managriha palace were next to each other. There is an inscription in the Dabli of Harigaon, according to which the Kailaskut building had 5 doors: South Gate, West Gate, Managriha Gate, Middle Gate and North Gate. Here, Managriha Dwar means the gate to Managriha from Kailaskut, which was the door connecting the palace of the king and the prime minister. Kailaskut Palace is also described in an inscription of Patan Vansarchok. In it, the palace is compared to the snow-capped Himalayan peak. It is understood that the Kailaskut Palace at that time was as tall as the Himalayas and as white as snow. Some have said that the Kailaskut building was in Harigaon, while others have said that it is in Malivilis. Some have said that it was in Gokarna. During the construction of Harigaon, bricks of Lichvi period have also been found. Bricks named Amshuverman have been found in Harigaon at different times. The locals claims that the bricks belongs to Kailaskut Palace. There are also Lichvi era avices. In 1968, while making a statue for the Saraswati temple near Dabli in Harigaon, a brick was found with the phrase Sri Ma Samanta Amshuverma. Archaeologists are of the opinion that these bricks, which also bear the title of Amshuverma, were used to make Kailaskut. This also gives further evidence that Kailaskut was in Harigaon. In various letters written by Uday Singh Dev, who is considered to be an influential in the history of Vishalnagar, the capital of Lichvi period, Kailaskut has been mentioned and it has been published in Nepal Mandala, which proves that Kailaskut was in Harigaon. Similarly, there is no doubt that palaces were built in places like Devpatan, Mangal Bazar, Dakshin Kilogram or Dhumbarai. Apart from this, it was speculated that Kailaskut was also located in Kailas and Hanuman Dokha areas of Pasupati area. The place where Amshuverma ascended the throne in Harigaon is now known as Dabali. There are still 2 Lichvi inscriptions. In the inscription of Abhishek Mandapa of Amshuverma of 608 Bikram Sambat, it is mentioned that the buildings of Mahabalya Adaksha, Pradagarichak, Kaligad, Pita Adaksha, Pratihar, etc. was near the Kailaskut palace. Similarly, in the records of 610 Bikram Sambat, it is mentioned that the temple of the main deity, like Pasupati and Changu Narayan, was given an annual grant from Kailaskut Darbar. This is another important proof that there was a palace in Harigaon. Thank you.